Welcome back to Strategic Leadership in the AI Era. I'm your host, and this is episode 20, Beyond Chatbots, How Agentic AI is Creating Autonomous Business Systems. I want to start with a story that has 3 chapters, because I think it's the most honest thing anyone can tell you about autonomous AI right now. Chapter 1. February 27th, 2024. The payments company Klarna publishes a press release that lands like a thunderclap across every boardroom in the developed world. Their new AI assistant, built with OpenAI, had been live globally for 1 month. In that month, it handled 2.3 million conversations. That was 2/3 of all their customer service chats. The company said it was doing the equivalent work of 700 full-time agents. Customer satisfaction was on par with humans. Repeat inquiries dropped 25%. Resolution time fell from 11 minutes to under 2. Estimated profit improvement for the year, $40 million. Every executive who read that release had the same thought. If they can do that, why can't we? Chapter 2, May 2025. Klarna's chief executive sits down with Bloomberg and says something remarkable. He says that because cost had become too dominant a factor in how they organized the work, what they ended up with was lower quality. The company began re-recruiting human agents. Now here's chapter 3, and it's the one almost nobody talks about, because it's less dramatic than either of the first 2. By the third quarter of 2025, on their earnings call, Klarna reported that the AI assistant was doing the equivalent work of 853 full-time agents. Not 700, 853. It was still handling roughly 2/3 of inquiries. The company attributed around $60 million in savings to it. So which is it? Triumph or retreat? The answer is both and neither. What actually happened is that a company learned, in public and at speed, where the line sits between what a machine should decide and what a human should decide, and then it redrew its operating model around that line. The agent didn't get smaller. The human role got sharper. That is the entire subject of today's episode, because we are now moving past the era of AI as something you prompt and into the era of AI as something that acts. And the leadership question changes completely when the software stops answering and starts doing. Let's get into it. Let's define our terms, because the marketing around this word has gotten genuinely out of hand. A chatbot, even a very good one, is reactive. You give it an input, it gives you an output, and the loop closes. It is a conversation. However impressive the response, the system does not persist, does not pursue, and does not act on the world. An agentic system is different in 4 specific ways. First, it decomposes. You give it a goal, and it breaks that goal into subtasks on its own. Second, it uses tools. It can call APIs, query databases, run code, browse, write files. It touches real systems. Third, it iterates. It observes the result of its own action and adjusts, rather than producing one answer and stopping. And fourth, it persists. It holds state across many steps toward an outcome you specified, not a reply you requested. Put simply, a chatbot answers a question. An agent completes a job. The dominant architecture for this right now is what engineers call orchestrator worker. A lead agent analyzes the goal, and builds a plan, then spins up specialized sub-agents that work in parallel on different pieces, and finally synthesizes what they found. Anthropic published detailed engineering results on exactly this pattern. On their internal research evaluations, a multi-agent system with a lead model directing sub-agents outperformed a single-agent version of the same top model by 90.2%. But, and I want you to hold on to this because it becomes the economic heart of this episode, that same write-up reports that agents typically consume around 4 times more tokens than a normal chat interaction, and multi-agent systems consume roughly 15 times more. And on one benchmark, token usage alone explained about 80% of the variation in performance. Read that again. The thing that most explains whether the agent succeeds is how much compute you let it spend. Autonomy right now is something you buy. And that brings us to the honesty problem. Gartner has warned about a practice it calls agent washing. Vendors rebranding existing chatbots, assistants, and robotic process automation as agentic without delivering genuine autonomous capability. Of the thousands of vendors making agentic claims, Gartner estimated only around 130 offer real agentic features. 130 out of thousands. If you are evaluating vendors this quarter, that number should be taped to your monitor. So how far along is everyone really? The data here is unusually clear and unusually humbling. McKinsey's Global State of AI survey, nearly 2,000 respondents across more than 100 nations, found that 23% of organizations report scaling an agentic AI system somewhere in the enterprise, and an additional 39% say they have begun experimenting with agents. So roughly 62% are at least touching this. But of those scaling, most say they're doing it in only 1 or 2 functions. This is a beachhead, not an occupation. Deloitte's numbers tell the same story from a different angle. In their emerging technology research, 30% of organizations were exploring agentic options, 38% were piloting, 14% had deployment-ready solutions, and 11% were actually running agentic systems in production. 11%. Sit with that for a second. 38% piloting, 11% in production. That is the pilot to production gap in a single pair of numbers, and it is the defining operational problem of this technology. Meanwhile, the forward projections are aggressive. Gartner predicts that by 2028, 15% of day-to-day work decisions will be made autonomously through agentic AI, up from essentially 0 in 2024, and that a third of enterprise software applications will include agentic AI, up from less than 1%. Deloitte's State of AI in the Enterprise report, surveying more than 3,200 leaders across 24 countries, found that by 2027, 74% of respondents expect their companies to be using AI agents at least moderately. So the trajectory is steep. But here is the number from that same Deloitte report that should stop you cold. Only 21% of respondents say their organization has a mature governance model in place for agentic AI. 21%. which means roughly 4 out of 5 organizations are deploying or preparing to deploy software that takes autonomous action without mature decision boundaries, real-time monitoring, or audit trails. Deloitte's own framing of this is the best headline I've read all year. Agentic AI is scaling faster than guardrails. Let's talk about where this is genuinely delivering, because it is, just not evenly. The single largest real deployment category is not the one most executives expect. It's software engineering. The Open Worldwide Application Security Project, OWASP, tracks agentic projects in the wild. In their State of Agentic AI Security and Governance report, of 53 agentic projects tracked, 28 were coding agents. Coding, they note, dominates enterprise AI application by nearly an order of magnitude. If you want to know what agents are actually doing inside companies today, the honest answer is writing, testing, and shipping software. The second is customer operations. And here, Salesforce has published its own numbers on its own front door. On help.salesforce.com, the company's Agentforce system handled 4.3 million inquiries and resolved 70% of them. 70% on a real support portal at real volume. That is not a demo. And then there's the plumbing, which is the least glamorous and most consequential development of the last 18 months. In November 2024, Anthropic released something called the Model Context Protocol, a common standard for how AI systems connect to tools and data. By December 2025, it had over 97 million monthly SDK downloads and around 10,000 active servers, with first-class support across ChatGPT, Claude, Cursor, Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, and Visual Studio Code. And on December 9th, 2025, it was donated to the newly formed Agentic AI Foundation under the Linux Foundation, co-founded by Anthropic, Block, and OpenAI, with support from Google, Microsoft, Amazon Web Services, Cloudflare, and Bloomberg. I want to underline why that matters strategically. Competitors who are spending hundreds of billions trying to beat each other agreed to jointly govern the connector layer. That is what an industry does when it decides that interoperability is worth more than lock-in. For you as a buyer, it means the integration work you do this year is less likely to be stranded next year. That is a real reduction in adoption risk. And it is a genuine reason the second wave of agent deployments should go better than the first. Now the hard part, because the failure data on Agentic AI is not a rounding error. It is the majority case. Start with the headline. Gartner predicts that more than 40% of Agentic AI projects will be canceled by the end of 2027, citing escalating costs, unclear business value, and inadequate risk controls. That's consistent with the broader picture. A widely cited 2025 study out of MIT's Project Nanda found that roughly 95% of enterprise generative AI pilots were delivering no measurable business return. IBM's Institute for Business Value surveyed 2,000 chief executives across 33 countries and 24 industries, and found that only about 25% of AI initiatives had delivered the expected return on investment, and just 16% had scaled enterprise-wide. 25% delivering, 16% scaled from the people who signed the checks. But the most important failure mode isn't financial, it's perceptual. And this is the study every leader in this space should know. The research organization METR ran a randomized controlled trial with 16 experienced open source developers working on 246 real tasks in repositories they already knew well. Half the tasks allowed AI tools, half didn't. Before starting, the developers forecast AI would make them about 24% faster. After finishing, they reported it had made them about 20% faster. They were 19% slower. Let me say that plainly. Skilled professionals doing real work, measured objectively, were slowed down by nearly a fifth, and they walked away convinced they had been sped up by a fifth. That is a roughly 40-point gap between perception and reality in the direction that flatters the technology. Now think about what that means for governance. If your AI business case is built on self-reported productivity gains, surveys, testimonials, the team says it saves them hours, you may be measuring a feeling, not an outcome. Deloitte's own research adds a structural note here. Pilots built through strategic partnerships were about twice as likely to reach full deployment as purely internal builds, and employee usage rates ran nearly double for externally built tools. The lesson isn't that agents don't work, it's that enthusiasm is not evidence, and that the discipline you apply to measurement matters more than the model you choose. Here is the part of the agentic conversation that gets the least airtime and deserves the most. A chatbot that gets manipulated says something embarrassing. An agent that gets manipulated does something expensive. The core vulnerability class is prompt injection. Hostile instructions smuggled into content the model reads, causing it to abandon its actual instructions. OWASP maps prompt injection to 6 of the 10 categories in its top 10 for agentic applications. 6 out of 10. It is not one risk among many, it is the substrate most other agent risks sit on. And it is no longer theoretical. In May 2026, Microsoft security researchers published findings on remote code execution vulnerabilities in AI agent frameworks, including 2 assigned CVE identifiers in Microsoft semantic kernel. In one, unsafe string handling meant a crafted lookup could become an executable payload. In another, a file download capability exposed to the model allowed writing a malicious payload directly into a Windows startup folder, a sandbox escape. Their conclusion is the single best sentence written about agent security, and I'm going to quote it directly. Your large language model is not a security boundary. The tools an agent can reach define its blast radius, not the model, the tools. Then there's the supply chain. In March 2026, backdoored versions of Light LLM, a model gateway library used across many agent frameworks, sat on the Python package index for roughly 3 hours and were downloaded close to 47,000 times before being pulled. 3 hours, 47,000. And the visibility problem underneath all of it, OWASP's report cites IBM data indicating that only 37% of organizations have a policy in place to detect shadow AI usage, which means the majority cannot reliably tell you what agents are already running inside their walls. If you take one thing from this segment, with a chatbot, the worst case is reputational. With an agent, the worst case is operational, financial, and legal. Your threat model has to change before your deployment does. So how do you actually govern this? The instinct in most organizations is to write one AI policy and apply it uniformly. Gartner has cautioned specifically against this, arguing that applying uniform governance across all AI agents leads to enterprise agent failure. And the logic is obvious once stated. An agent that drafts internal meeting summaries and an agent that issues customer refunds should not face the same approval regime. Treat them identically, and you will either strangle the harmless one or under-control the dangerous one, usually both. The better model is graduated autonomy. Classify every agent by the reversibility and blast radius of its actions and set oversight accordingly. Read-only research agents can run freely. Agents that draft but do not send need review at the point of dispatch. Agents that move money, change records, sign commitments, or touch customers need hard boundaries, human confirmation at defined checkpoints, and a complete audit trail. Deloitte frames the human role here as the agent supervisor, a person who enters the workflow at intentionally designed points to handle exactly the exceptions that require judgment. Not someone watching everything, which doesn't scale, and not someone watching nothing, which is how you end up in the news. Someone positioned at the specific handoffs where machine confidence is low and human consequence is high. And that brings us back to Klarna, because their story is not actually a story about AI capability. It's a story about optimization targets. Their chief executive's own diagnosis was that cost became too dominant a factor in how the work was organized, and the result was lower quality. The technology did what it was pointed at. It was pointed at the wrong thing. That is the governance lesson in one line. An autonomous system will pursue the objective you actually encode at machine speed without pausing to ask whether the objective was wise. Which means in the agentic era, choosing the metric is the act of leadership. Everything downstream is just execution. Let's make this actionable. Number 1, audit for agent washing before you buy. With Gartner estimating only around 130 of thousands of claimed agentic vendors offer genuine capability, make every vendor demonstrate the 4 properties: decomposition, tool use, iteration, and persistence on your data in your environment. If it only responds to prompts, it is a chatbot with a new price tag. Number 2, pick one workflow that is multi-step, cross-system, and reversible. Multi-step, so an agent has something to orchestrate. Cross-system, because that's where the value hides. Reversible, so your first production mistake is a lesson and not an incident. Follow the evidence on where this works today. Engineering workflows and customer operations are where the deployed results actually are. Number 3, measure objectively, never by survey. The Metter trial found professionals who felt 20% faster were measured 19% slower. Before you start, define the metric, take the baseline, and instrument the outcome. If you cannot measure it without asking someone how they feel, you cannot govern it. Number 4, budget for tokens as a real operating line. Agents run roughly 4 times the token consumption of chat, multi-agent systems roughly 15 times, and token spend explains a large majority of performance variance. Autonomy has a unit cost. Model it up front, or it will surface later as the reason your project joins the 40% that get canceled. Number 5, classify agents by blast radius and govern them differently. Uniform governance is a documented failure pattern. Sort every agent by whether its actions are reversible and who they touch, then assign oversight to match. Read-only runs free. Irreversible and customer-facing gets a human checkpoint. Number 6, treat tool access as the security perimeter. Your model is not a security boundary. The tools it can reach are: inventory every capability you grant, apply least privilege, log every call, and establish who is accountable when an agent acts. And get a policy for detecting shadow AI, because only around 37% of organizations have one. Number 7, name your agent supervisors before you deploy. Decide in advance which decisions escalate to a human, at which step, and who that human is. If that role does not exist on an org chart before launch, it will be invented in the middle of an incident. That's our look at Agentic AI, the shift from software you prompt to software that acts. Let's recap the numbers that frame the moment. 62% of organizations are at least experimenting with agents, but only about 11% are running them in production. Only 21% have mature governance for autonomous systems. More than 40% of agentic projects are forecast to be canceled by the end of 2027. Around 25% of AI initiatives have delivered the return their executives expected. And in a controlled trial, experienced professionals who believed they were 20% faster were measured 19% slower. But alongside that, 70% of 4.3 million support inquiries resolved autonomously on one company's live portal. 97 million monthly downloads of a connector standard that the industry's fiercest rivals agreed to jointly govern. And a company that walked back its AI strategy in public and still ended the year running more autonomous work than when it started, just with humans placed where judgment actually belongs. That's the real picture. Not a revolution, not a bubble. A capability that works where it's scoped, measured, and supervised, and fails expensively where it isn't. Here's your challenge for this week. Find one workflow in your organization that spans at least 3 systems and involves repetitive judgment-light steps. Write down what it currently costs in hours, in errors, in delay. Then write down the single number that would tell you an agent had improved it. Not a feeling, a number. Then ask what that agent would be allowed to touch and who would be accountable when it acted. If you can answer all 4 of those questions, you are ready to pilot. If you can't, that gap is your actual first project. If you found this episode valuable, please share it with the technology leaders, operators, and innovators in your network who are trying to separate the agentic signal from the noise. Subscribe to Strategic Leadership in the AI Era wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a review. It helps more leaders find these conversations. Until next time, keep leading strategically, keep asking what the system is actually optimizing for, and keep the human in the loop where the consequences are real. This has been Strategic Leadership in the AI Era. See you in the next episode.